Good evening. I'd like to call to order the working session for Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. Just as a reminder, the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. And one thing I would ask for you is, if you are speaking, please speak loudly. If you go back and listen to some of the recordings, a couple of voices are hard to hear. So if you can just project a little, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
No one's ever told me to talk louder.
I have often been said I'm a very silent talker, so not.
It's the evil eyes. Say a lot.
All right, moving along. Item 3, Budget and Finance, 3.01, Investment Plan Update. Mr. Longwell.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. So the investment plan update is something that we typically update the board on in August of every year at a work session. It's a function of policy that we at least talk about the investment plan one time a year. And so when we look at our investment plan, really I like to start with the decisions that we make about our deposits and investments, and those decisions are based in either board policy, what we can invest in or what we can't invest in. It's a function of law and regulations because the state and federal government have certain requirements also about those deposits and investments. And then ultimately the board does authorize us every spring heading into summer the list of financial institutions that we can use. And so when you look at your treasurer's report, that matches up to our authorized list of financial institutions. And then you'll notice that throughout the year we kind of manage the balances in different, we manage the balances and move them among the different institutions to try to manage our cash flow, but ultimately also to increase and maximize our interest earnings to the best extent possible. So sometimes we're locking the money up in certificates of deposit, and then depending on the year, other times we're leaving it more liquid. Some of that depends on the cycle or the time of the year we're in with property tax collections, when we're collecting other revenue streams. And so we're kind of managing that on a month-to-month basis throughout the year. And much credit to Mrs. Kristen Edwards and Mrs. Bobby Ely as they're really looking at that very closely. They're looking at all of our check runs, or electronic deposits, or electronic payments going out, and they're trying to manage the kind of the Rubik's Cube, if you will, to make sure we have the cash in all the right places, but also that we're able to maximize our interest earnings on an annual basis.
Very good. Any questions? All right. Move on to item number 4, curriculum, opening of school message. Dr. Bitts.
So we had, obviously, our opening day with staff here a couple weeks ago now. We had our opening day with students last week. We're already on day 6 of the school year. So we've made it through a cycle. This is the point in time where our secondary principals especially can rest a little easier knowing that every period of every cycle day, students showed up to the room where they were supposed to, a teacher was there weren't 2 classes booked in the same room, all that sort of thing. So day 6 being over is a special time for secondary principals. But opening of school, we shared a message. I shared a message with our staff, and there were a couple of you that were able to join us. And after getting some feedback from that message, I thought it was important for the whole board to be able to hear that message as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I shared with the staff. And this is a message that I share kind of a summarized version without the PowerPoint with all of our staff groups. So when I meet with our substitute teaching staff to welcome them back, to our facilities, to our food service, all those different groups. So Dr. Bowman and Mr. Longwell can probably stand up here and say it for me at this point because they've heard it a few times. But I'm excited to share with you the message tonight. And I'm really centered on these 3 words: tradition, pride, and excellence. So our motto for the school district, it's kind of taken on a life of its own in our district over the years. These 3 words, we see it on our pins, on our branding, we see it on the poles outside of our buildings. There are these 3 words, again, that have brought this meaning, but we don't necessarily always take the time to stop and think about what do they mean to us. Often told by people that have worked in other districts or have been other places, they say it's not like this everywhere. And they talk about Mechanicsburg being the special place. And inevitably, there are times where folks stop and they kind of point back to these three words and they ask, you know, what is it about tradition, pride, and excellence that makes this place so special? So I was on a quest this summer to first be able to start thinking about or find out the origins of tradition, pride, and excellence, our motto, learn a little bit about how it's been used over the years, and then be able to hopefully bring a little bit of new meaning to those three words, to our motto, for me. And hopefully, in hearing me process it with you, it'll bring new meaning to all of you as well. So I started from a historical perspective. If you didn't know, the first high school class that started in Mechanicsburg was in 1871. So that was the first time that high school students began schooling, public education in Mechanicsburg. And the first commencement occurred in 1875. One student graduated in that year. So we just celebrated, you might remember, 150 commencements just a couple years ago. So this past year was 152nd commencement here in Mechanicsburg. So pretty special. But I think there's value in kind of centering ourselves on, okay, so 1870s, what was happening around that time? Let's kind of position it in our nation's history. So what was happening in the 1870s? Well, the Civil War ended in 1865, so we were just coming off of the end of the Civil War. At that point, Ulysses S. Grant became president, and during that time, we were right in the middle of Reconstruction. And then Reconstruction abruptly ended in 1876 with the Compromise of 1876, when they decided who was going to be the presidential winner, and in exchange for that, they pulled all the troops out of the South and ended Reconstruction. So very quickly, some of the ground that was made up by former slaves and ancestors of those slaves was quickly diminished. This is where our country was in this period of time. Also, a few inventions that are of note from the 1870s that I think have some educational connections. So the QWERTY keyboard design was invented in 1874. A.G. Bell's first phone call was in 1876. Of course, we're going to talk about phones a little bit later tonight on a different agenda item. I don't think he realized what he was creating there in 1876. Then in 1879, Edison's light bulb, it wasn't the first light bulb invented at that time, but it was the first light bulb that had the ability to last for an extended period of time. So you picture 1871 to 1875 was this first high school class. They didn't even have light bulbs at that point that were going to last for an extended period of time. So this was the beginning of our district. 1871, 1875, the first graduation, first commencement. We know that school in the Mechanicsburg area was in 3 distinct districts for a long time at the beginning of our history. There was Mechanicsburg, there was Upper Allen, and then there was Shiremanstown. And during that time, in that period of time, we had 2 supervising principals in the 1920s, Professor H.B. Fell and R.L. Van Scotten. Both of them, prior to that, there was just a high school principal, but in 1922, they started having this supervising principal, so someone that was above the principal and did what would become the superintendent's job starting in 1932. So in the 30s up until 1964, so from 1871, the beginning of our high school, to 1964, there were just 3 superintendents. And in 1964, we became the first area school district in the state of Pennsylvania. And maybe you've heard me tell this story before, sorry if you have. But we were the first area school district in Pennsylvania because the Secretary of Education lived in our school district, and he put our application to become an area school district on the top of the pile. So when they signed it and ratified them, we were the first ones that were ratified. So Mechanicsburg Area School District, 1964, we became the first one, and at that time, then Dr. Charles Shields became our first superintendent, and he was here from 64 to 86. It's extremely humbling to know that since 1964, I am only the 6th superintendent. And obviously, if you go back before that, in the last 100 years, basically, I'm only the 9th superintendent in Mechanicsburg schools. Extremely humbling. High school principal, not a whole lot different. Mr. Reedy, who's here with us tonight, he's only the 7th high school principal since 1964. We've only had 4 middle school principals since 1964. Mr. Ferentz and Mr. Yon took up a lot of that history there. But only 4 middle school principals. And honestly, if you went beyond, those are just kind of the 3 administrators that we pulled out here. But if you went beyond that and looked at some of the other positions, there's this incredible staying power of folks. When you look at the finance area, our business managers, Dr. Van Drew was here for many, many years now. Mr. Longwell has been here for many years. When you look at athletics, athletic director, recreation, there's so many different areas of our district where we have had folks who have just been here for years and years. But that's, from a historical perspective, some of the top administrators in our district. So that took me back to, all right, so when did this tradition, pride, and excellence come to be? So I obviously enlisted the help of Mr. Murray and Bill Murray, our archivist. We went back, and the very first time that we could find tradition, pride, and excellence appearing in our district was actually in 2001. I expected it to be back in the 60s, 70s, something like that, but it wasn't until 2001 that these 3 words first appeared. So around this time in 2001 was the last time that the district had undergone quite a few larger construction projects. That's when the current middle school was being built. There was some renovations to just about all of the elementaries. The high school got a major renovation at that time. And during that time, Dr. Bledgy and his team was looking to create some branding, if you will, to be able to let people know about the good things happening in Mechanicsburg. And he created this pamphlet. That's the cover of it there. And the pamphlet was structured around these 3 words. He talked about Mechanicsburg being a traditional community, and he described the community there in the pamphlet. He talked about it being a source of a lot of pride. He talked about the different programs that we have at Mechanicsburg. And then he talked about the excellence of our schools, and he described a number of the achievements that different students and staff had accomplished in recent years at that time. So it was really just this effort to be able to let the community know, hey, we're a pretty great place, and here's 3 words that we can kind of use to symbolize those good things that are happening. So in 2002, then it's the first time that you see the appearance of the logo with tradition, pride, and excellence on it. Excuse me, on the cover of the strategic plan, which at that time was for 02 through 08, this logo appeared, and obviously it has taken off since then. We still use it everywhere today. So from a historical perspective, that gave me some idea of the 3 words and where they had come from, maybe some of the ways that they had been used, but I was still trying to make meaning of these 3 words for myself. So I went to some of our other foundational documents and statements. And as a school district, we prescribe to the idea that we're a school by design, and that our beliefs, our mission, and our vision serve as the foundation of all that we do. So when we create instructional programs, when we hire people, when we do policy work here around the table, we point back to our beliefs as a system, our mission and our vision to make those decisions. So in revisiting those, our beliefs, these are our collective assumptions, there are attitudes, there are truths that as a system we believe. Our mission This is our output. So our mission is what we want our students to know, understand, do, and be like when they cross the stage as graduates. And then we can articulate that down to, okay, well, if that's what we want them to be able to know, understand, do, and be like when they're in 12th grade, what does that mean for a 3rd grader? What does that mean for a 4th grader? What does that mean for a 5th grader? So it's very output focused. Some of you that have connections to other districts, you might have heard districts talk about a portrait of a graduate or a portrait of whatever the mascot might be for that school. Well, we haven't really subscribed to that specifically because our mission statement is already written that way. It's output focused. This is what we want students ultimately to be when they leave us. Our mission is what we want our system to do and be like in order to create that output. We believe that if we as a system are striving to be a learning community, inspired to explore, and empowered to innovate, that is going to help us get to our mission, that we will get to be able to create those students that we're looking for. So in reading through those documents and understanding kind of where those came from and understanding a little bit more about tradition, pride, and excellence, it still brought me back to this place of trying to decide, well, so what do these 3 words mean for me? And I'll share with you my perspective on the 3, along with some, I think, dangers or things that we should be cautious of around these 3 words as well. So for me, what does tradition mean? Tradition means keeping the needs of our community's children at the center of our decision making. Students first. That should be our tradition. And I believe it is our tradition that we're keeping students at the heart of what we do. Doing what is best for today's students, even if it means thoughtful change. And this will connect to one of the dangers with tradition as well. We need to make sure that we're looking at what today's students need, not the students from the 70s, not the ones from the 60s, not the ones from the 1920s. We need to look at what do our students today and tomorrow need and be willing to have thoughtful change when we need it. We also believe that tradition is to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us as we steward the district. We're part of that tradition, that longevity that we see in our district. We're just another part of that, and one day we will hand off the baton to someone else. I always say that I'm here for a season to use all my abilities and talents the best I can, and I will hand it off to someone else at some point. But we stand on those folks' shoulders, and we do what we can here while we steward the district during this time. So some of the dangers with tradition. This word scares me from a complacency and a resistance to change, because sometimes we hear that word tradition and we think, well, this is how we do things here, and we become resistant to being able to have meaningful change. The other fear with tradition is marginalization, because the reality is that in 152 years of our district's history, many of the students and families that are part of our district now were not a part of our district for most of those 152 years. So we have to stay cognizant of what does it say and what does it imply to families that were not a part of much of that history when we say the word tradition. Because oftentimes it can imply that we want to focus on the way things were. And if you're someone who wasn't a part of things the way they were, that can be very, very marginalizing. Pride. Dignity for all. It's the emotion we feel when we invest ourselves fully. It's the emotion we feel when we watch our students perform. It's the emotion we feel when we see our staff and students take responsible risks for the sake of learning and growing. But of course, there's dangers with pride as well. We have to guard against arrogance. We have to guard against elitism. We have to guard against self-reliance. None of us have arrived. We can be proud for the things, the accomplishments that we make, but there's still things that we can learn and grow, again, for today's and tomorrow's students. Finally, excellence. Start with the John Wooden quote I love: becoming the best you are capable of becoming. Contributing with your body, mind, heart, soul, acting with character, and finding joy at the heart of the school. That's what excellence looks like. Some of the dangers with excellence: perfectionism, performative thinking, focusing on strictly the result rather than finding that joy and purpose in the process. So to me, that's what tradition, pride, and excellence mean. I hope that just hearing a little bit more about it tonight, some of the history behind it, hearing me process it a little bit with you, as you see those three words in different places around the district, perhaps it'll make you reflect a little bit on what they mean to you as well. I think one of the important parts of this entire meaning of continuing to grow and continuing to grow as a district is continuing to look at how do we plan for that growth. And we do that through our comprehensive plan. So the other piece that I shared, or actually Dr. Bowman shared with the staff on opening day, was just some of the areas that we're going to continue to have a focus on from a higher district level this upcoming school year. These are areas that, one of which you'll hear more about tonight in just a few minutes, but we'll be coming back to the board with other presentations and discussions on many of these areas. Not every staff member is involved in every one of these aspects, but these are the kinds of things that are happening at the district level that is important for our staff to know about. So curriculum cycle, we have some new departments that are going through the curriculum cycle this year. We'll have world language and English at both the secondary level. Math continues in the curriculum cycle in the second year of that. So we'll actually have a presentation on that sometime in the next month where Mrs. Woodall and Dr. Bowman will share some updates on where we are with the curriculum cycle. Secondary schedules, the high school is working hard to be able to modify their schedule for next school year. So we're going to have Mr. Reedy joining us again here shortly to be able to share some of those updates with you. And then the middle school as well. There are some areas of the middle school schedule that are ripe for change and to continue to adapt the program there for our students to continue to be best for them. MTSS development, multi-tiered systems of support. So how are we supporting students that need a little bit more? That the Tier 1 program isn't enough for them. How are we continuing to provide support to them in academics and behavior and social emotional learning? And then healthy use of technology, including cell phones. This is the one that we'll discuss again here in just a minute or two. Being able to look beyond cell phones as well to say, okay, what does healthy use of technology look like? You know, we dove into one-to-one for all students, and we dove into a lot of virtual platforms during an era of COVID where we had to. And we're at the point where some of those devices are up for replacement. We're up to the point where we have some years now of data around whether some of these programs are working or not. It's time to be able to reassess and say, okay, so do we still need this many devices for our students? Do we still need this amount of screen time for students? What should an appropriate developmental amount of screen time look like for students throughout the day? And then last, maximize value of staff-only time for everyone. We've continued to really place a premium on the staff-only time that we provide our staff to be able to have collaborative planning and professional development. We've long been a district that has guarded against the one-size-fits-all PD where you just bring everybody into the auditorium and everybody gets the exact same professional development. It's a whole lot easier that way. And you just have everybody go to one place and you have one speaker and that's it. It's a lot tougher to be able to find what is the life skills, that's our life skills teachers. What are they doing on the staff-only day that's going to make sure that it's meaningful time for them? What are you going to do to make sure that the speech and language pathologists have an activity that's going to be meaningful for them? And it's a lot harder to do that, but we're committed to making sure that we continue to do that. And some of these smaller groups, we need to make sure that we're improving in that area because we can. So those are some of the things you'll continue to hear a little bit more about. Again, one of them in just a minute. But I appreciate having the opportunity to share with you who are a part of that tradition, pride, and excellence. Some of you for many years, some of you are much newer to that tradition, pride, and excellence. We appreciate you being a part of it. Any questions or comments?
I would just say I appreciate the way you took those words that can tend to be kind of confining and really expanded them to be more inclusive. And my curiosity would be if you've had a chance to talk with students of different ethnicities, people who are new to the district, to see if those values resonate with them, especially in the way that you framed it, because I think you worked hard in your framing to be inclusive rather than inclusive.
I would definitely say that the conversations I've had, not specifically about the words, but about our district, influenced my thinking here. But it's definitely something I'm excited to do after this has seemed to resonate with the folks who have heard it. So I'm excited through this year to be able to ask some more people and maybe gather some more data from other people about what do you think about these three words.
And our pastors network typically meets with you twice a year. I'd love to, maybe you thought of that already, but I'd love to see you share part of that there.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciated,
I appreciated that you talked about the dangers of tradition, pride, and excellence, because that is always something, the only constant we have is change. And as the demographic of the district is changing, we can't, it's always been done that way, so we're going to continue to do that way. Well, if it's not serving the interests and the needs of the students in front of you, then, that's where growth happens, right? So I really appreciated hearing all of the history. It's amazing always, right? When you're like, oh yes, that's right, that's so long ago. But then sort of being aware of history changes too, right? So, and it's history's dynamic, it's not static. So I appreciated you kind of going, yes, this is all amazing. However, we just have to be careful that we're looking at sometimes the barriers some of those words can present.
what I was going to say was with the words tradition and pride, it's very evident in the school district because it's hard to find a teacher that didn't graduate from this high school. So many people, if they leave the area, they tend to move back when they have their own families, and the next generation, you find generation after generation here. But I just feel so many of the staff and teaching staff and stuff have deep-rooted ties to the school district, and they have found it that there is a lot of tradition and pride in here, and they want to live that still for the rest, their career. So I always find that if somebody wants to come back and be part of the school district after they've been in the school, that's just, it was an unhealthy place for them to be. So
I think that is a nice reminder that tradition, we have to be cautious of that. However, I feel like the tradition in the school district has always been to bring everybody together, and everybody is part of it, and that's also part of our excellence and part of the pride I've always felt, because I do feel it's a very welcoming school district to everyone. So I think it's a good reminder, but I do feel it's always been the mindset.
I think one of the nice things that kind of wrapped it all up and put a nice little bow on it was the young lady who talked after you finished going through your slides, and it kind of brought home that tradition, pride, and excellence. Just the pride in her being able to accomplish what she had, and the challenges she had to overcome, that it just kind of brought everything full circle and kind of put an extra stamp on the conversation.
I'll share very delicate there. That was great. This was a student who the board would have interacted with on a very different end of things. in her journey, and she was able to overcome it, and now is in the healthcare pathway at the CTC, and is on track to graduate this year, and was part of some of our specialized programming at the high school the last few years, and she's got a pretty awesome story. So.
I thought it was really cool to see the chart of, the superintendents and the principals, because, I feel like I reference this not irregularly, but, when you think of public education today, you think of like chaos, in a lot of places it's just chaotic, and it's just like, who wants to lead, and just like when you hear people talk about it, like in communities or groups, like there's not a lot of good things being said, like when I'm observing, and the longevity of staff, the longevity of leadership, a lot of times are reflective of the chaotic nature in districts, and to see the longevity at Mechanicsburg and what I've experienced as someone new to the district, in the past 3.5 years, new to the board this past year, and just like, I feel like, again, that's a top-down thing, just like Mechanicsburg feels like a unicorn when you look at other districts and hear other stories, and I think that is something to take pride in that way, where like we can't take this for granted, what we have in the district. And so I think that, again, when people who have been here for years and generations, as students, as employees, as board members, you can kind of maybe get comfortable and think this is the norm, but it's not. And so I think that's something to recognize as well.
And I think the challenge for us is to hold our administration, but also hold ourselves accountable to the tradition, pride, and excellence that, I always remember, and it was reminded many times, we're here for the kids, and that's our focus. And if we keep that in mind, we hold ourselves accountable, our thoughts and our decisions are weighed on what's best, not what one political side or another political side goes to. It's what's best for the kids, what's best for Mechanicsburg, what's best that we ensure and continue that tradition, pride, and excellence in all that we do. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to move on to number 7, which is the first reading of revised board policy 237, personal electronic devices. Dr. Vaughn.
My turn. I just wanted to take a few minutes tonight, provide some important background information surrounding some of the updates that we're looking at regarding policy 237, which does focus on personal electronic devices. The healthy use of technology, as Dr. Bitts mentioned, is aligned with our comprehensive plan. More specifically, it focuses on student wellness. Tonight, we're going to look at our K-12 approach to this question, specifically as relates to the student use of personal electronic devices. Goals for tonight, really pretty simplistic, but explore the why behind the need for the changes. Look at some of the updates. What does it mean? What are we trying to do? And then specifically kind of look at the change at the high school level. I know we do this all the time. We talk about tradition, and this is a good one. Speaking from somebody who hasn't been here only but 2 years, we're continually looking at our students and ourselves through a new lens as the world evolves around us, constantly changing. It would be a mistake not to leverage that learning. So our mission answers the question, what kind of graduates are we committed to developing? We believe the changes that we're making align with our mission. So to really look at the why, I stole a quote here from Mr. Reedy, but I'll give you a minute to read that. I think it really kind of sums up quite nicely why we're really looking at what we're doing. I didn't know he was going to be here, by the way.
That's a good one.
I love the
You gave him
last.
credit then.
So as we looked at the options for the policy, we really kind of looked at three main avenues. And then also looked through three different lenses, that of state law, right? Board policies, we're looking at rules and regulations, we're looking at state law, we're looking at board policy, and we're looking at building rules and practices. As we considered the options for this policy, we looked at three avenues. We could go down the road of principal discretion, which truthfully, that's where the policy currently sits and without the changes. We could go to kind of that middle ground of there's going to be some prohibition, but we're also going to still allow some room for principal discretion. Or we're going to go to what some think maybe the state is going to mandate, which we don't know yet, is bell to bell. Can't have it. So being that state law hasn't yet made a final decision, we're going to do what we do and what we think is best for our kids and for Mechanicsburg. So as you look at the edits or the changes, I think you'll see here that we've tried to emulate our mission and our vision. So then it now really looks at a kind of, we mentioned the high school for a very clear reason. K to 8, we're going to stay the course. As we talked with our building administrators, what we're doing works. But there haven't been a lot of issues with current practice. So we're going to continue that prohibition of bell to bell, and we feel that's still age appropriate. Off and away, bell to bell. They don't really need to be looking at it. We provide devices for educational purposes. Now, that change may, in our minds, be appropriate at the high school level. So that middle ground, we feel, is going to go away from the prohibition bell to bell and move to, so that's a typo there I noticed, it's going to move to that middle ground of some prohibition with some principal discretion. So we'll cover that.
You're trying to surprise them here.
I guess I was, yeah. Sorry about that. I just noticed that. So, what does that mean at the high school? Mr. French, if you could just take one and pass one along, please. The high school decided to take a different route this year and embrace the concept of change. And they're calling it, which I really think is quite creative, and when you think about it, really aligns with the ideals of this initiative, called the Matched Presence Initiative. All right, so in the simplest of terms, the Presence Initiative is using a red and green zones concept. And I'll go into that a little bit further. You'll see that phone caddy expectation. That's one of the expectations that's allowing the red zone concept, but also giving the students hopefully a little bit of comfortability. Like we're not, some school districts have gone the route of we're locking your phones away. And there's pouches and you can't get access to them, and we're not jumping to that extreme. But we are asking and expecting our students to put their phone caddies off and put their phones off and put them in the caddies when they walk into those classrooms, which is defined as the red zones. So the red zones here, more specifically, you can see, include our instructional periods, that IE period, where they're getting that remediation or enrichment, study halls. So I know that was kind of a debate even from the student perspective that we heard from last time. But study halls are an opportunity for learning. And we really want to teach our students to be responsible with the time that they have within that school day, especially because we really want our kids to be involved. And if they can learn to use that time wisely, they can be more involved outside of school or even in school because they're learning to be responsible. The other part of those red zones you'll see is some of the non-instructional areas, right? They're still red zones. We want kids to be communicative, to be alert, and to be present when they're in the nurse's office, when they're in the main office, when they're in the library, when they're in the career center. We want them to be present, to be mindful of where they're at. The green zones are the areas where we're going to hopefully help our students learn some of those positive habits, right? In the real world, we all have to abide by it. Our kids can too, not only in high school, but then also for beyond. Learn when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, to be on your phone, to use your phone, to access it. So we're not cutting off all access. They're gonna have times throughout the day, periodically, right, at the end of every period and between classes. If they need to communicate or they need to check something, they can do that. During lunch, a little bit more of an extended period of time. And I understand there may be some concerns there, where kids are just gonna sit at the tables and they're gonna be on their phones. But I would challenge you to actually sometime maybe visit, and with Mr. Reedy's blessing, you'll see that that's not always true. And there's probably more kids than we wanna believe that actually will embrace not getting on their phone. There's more kids that I think succumb to the peer pressure of being on their phone, or they're just watching more of their friends on their phones, so they get on their phones, right? It's not that they want to be on their phone, but, well, I guess everybody else is, so I'll get on mine. And I know even Fridays, right, we do games, we do fun activities. There's some like fun challenges. They'll put games on Fridays to help encourage the kids to interact as peers. So they do some creative things at MASH to help encourage that and support the initiative already. For you, right, as board members, you're gonna get questioned, we know that. So we thought it was important to maybe kind of give you 3 main talking points that you could use when you're questioned by interested community members. Those are a focus on learning, being present, and safety. All right, those are your 3 main things. So in regards to focus on learning, our red zones promote a focus on learning. Or trying to remove that distraction, right, by not giving them access to those, what we call PEDs, just a simple abbreviation for those personal electronic devices. So they can focus on learning and interacting with those around them, whoever it might be, whether it's a peer, whether it's a group project, whether it's a teacher in front of the classroom. Being present, the presence initiative. I'm just as guilty of it at times. Where we just kind of, you get lost and you forget and you're not as present as you need to be. And I would imagine as a high school student, if I had to deal with a cell phone, it probably would have been even worse for me. I'm kind of thankful I didn't. That is one thing where I even said to my own kids, like, you are dealing with things that we never had to deal with. And I don't envy them for that. I think it just complicates it even further. So I think our push here compliments to Mr. Reedy and his team over at MASH of being present, be in the moment, enjoy that time with your peers. You have plenty of time. If you need to check your phone, you need to do something. And hopefully it just kind of also reinforces that the real world is not social media, right? The real world's right here, right now. It's in front of you. And then lastly, safety, right? Obviously, always a focus on safety. I mentioned the caddies earlier. Those phones are still available if they absolutely needed them. In some case of an emergency, to be truthful, if we're in an emergency situation, we don't want our kids on phones. We don't, because we want them being alert and being present so that they can react and hear the directives of those around them that are helping to keep them safe. And I mean, it kind of shows like phones, all the phones are on and they're trying to text or call, like towers get crammed up. Now, possibly we're interfering with the emergency personnel that are responding to support us. We don't want that either. That's one aspect. The other aspect, if you noticed on your flyer, is they are not allowing headphones or earbuds anymore. So while, it used to be we'd put one in and God love you, Mr. Reedy, I walked in those shoes and I know that battle, right? I know that battle of 1 versus 2 versus, I think that's gonna clarify things and simplify things for our team. But also, again, to reinforce that there's a safety perspective to that. As you're walking through the hallways, again, if there's an announcement that comes on, or there's a situation, or a teacher calls your name, or an administrator is trying to get your attention, I may have never experienced that in my career, where I'm like calling a kid 3 times and they don't hear me, and then I fall into the classroom only to realize that they have 2 earbuds in, and that's why they didn't hear me. It's not that they were actually ignoring me. So on one hand, I felt good. On the other hand, I'm like, oh, we got to fix this. All right, so we're addressing that through that safety aspect as well. So those are your 3 talking points, right? To focus on learning, being present, and being safe. That's it. Questions?
I guess the one question I have is the short 5-6 minutes transition between classes. I mean, does that I don't know if that's too small of a time for people to, everybody starts getting on their phone and, things get all clogged up or something, I don't know. That's the only period of the whole day, I think it might be a problem, I don't know. I was kind of wondering why you would allow them to use the phone in between classes since it's such a small time period.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. Thank you for your support with everything. Always have to tell you that. It's a great question. We're 6 days in. Students are doing great. They're more focused on getting on time to class in that seat before the bell, because that's the other effort that we're carrying out is to be on time for class. And kids are really good. We've expanded the physical layout of our building significantly. So it's rare that you have a student from the 400s going to the 100s, but like today was day 6 or some movement with study halls. You have kids hustling to get to the classroom. In my observation for 6 days, most of the kids, if they are using it, it's because of they're trying to check their schedule to see where they're going. But kids are doing exactly what we thought. I thought the same thing, and they're zooming. Yeah.
I was going to say, it has to be turned off and put in a caddy, and then you get it, you turn it on. By the time you get to it, halfway you go to class, by the time you get there, you got to turn it off. So, I mean, there's not a lot of time to get to truly use it. So I think a lot of students might just say, just take it to the next class and do it in the caddy.
I just imagine all the phones going off at that 5 minutes because everybody texts everybody, and then everybody gets to answer the next period, and then it's like,
Yeah, it's disjointed, and it's becoming like a calculator now. Kids are just putting them in their bags, and it's just another tool in the toolbox. It's been an interesting human study of psychology.
How to write notes and fold them into the world.
That's right.
Gotta do this one.
yeah, are they allowed to pass notes?
I think one of the benefits from this approach and from writing the policy this way is that there's still room to make those adjustments if necessary. So obviously the policy itself is the board prohibiting it from instructional spaces. So I think that's the one change for K through 8 that they appreciate is that while their rule hasn't changed at all, now that is going to have the backing of the board in policy to say, no, this is not allowed. Not that they've had a lot of issues with folks pushing back over the years, but there's a different level of teeth to it when you can say that. For the high school level, still having that principal discretion in these non-instructional times can allow them to potentially, if another couple months in, the honeymoon's over, it's stretching out, now kids are late to class because they are trying to do a text, we could adjust and not have to change the whole policy, but Mr. Rady can make that adjustment and say, you know what, we're just doing lunch now, no more in the hallways.
So I would assume, the 9th graders aren't going to be fighting this because they're used to that, and they're like, oh my gosh, we get to use our phones at lunchtime, more than they had before. So I'm surprised to hear you kind of say that it's been going smoothly. We haven't really had any issues because I thought you might have an uproar and we might have a walkout or something.
Yeah. We did a temperature check today on staff and a quick survey, how things are going, operationally speaking. And we have a discipline continuum for this. We wanted to be clear with families up front and staff and students about what the continuum would look like. It's similar to that of society. If you first time, your warning. Second time, it's a conversation. The phone has to go in the caddy, and then it's a contact home via a standard script that we have. And in the building right now, we've had two times that I went to that level of the second time. So kids, they want to do well. I think it's consistent across the board. There's not a code switch going on, and so it's been a positive experience so far. So we'll keep at it. We'll keep at it.
I just really affirm that. I mean, the Matched Presence Initiative. I think that's a great title. I appreciate the three priorities you highlighted, Dr. Bowman. I think the reality is there is an addictive quality to these devices. And yet, as I was listening to some of that and thinking through it at our previous meeting, you know, it kind of feels like we're spinning in the wind if we try to set something up for a few hours, knowing that the rest of their lives they can do that. So I feel like you really landed on some good priorities that focus on where things need to be, but can also help to kind of, you know, indirectly address some of those other issues, which I think are really important. I really appreciated too, like the comments that you wanted to establish a policy that could be enforced. Because I mean, whether you're talking to an attorney or whoever, they'll always tell you the worst thing, and you know, worse than not having a policy is having one you can't enforce or don't enforce. So I just really appreciate the balanced approach to this.
And this also positions us that if the legislature goes to the next step and does do the bell-to-bell, you know, we're already restricted, or not restricted, but we've already had a policy in place for that when if we have to take that next step, it's not going to be a huge step. It's just a logical, gradual progression. And maybe I'll stop getting the emails about pouches. I've got companies reaching out to me all the time about wanting to sell us pouches, you know, all different kinds and various.
I love the policy, and I especially love your statement, you know, that the last 2 lines, I think, about helping students decide where their attention, where they want it to go. And, you know, when you look at the addictive quality of social media and phones and all of that, and you think about that ridiculous stat, I think, like the 139% increase in childhood anxiety, right, in the last 15 years or whatever, and that's just what? And, you know, Dr. Bowman talked a little bit about it. You guys are doing things, remember at the end of the school day, you could just get on the bus and go home, and all that stayed there, right, and you got a break from whoever broke up with who, and who, you know, all of that stuff, you could just be like, oh, that's done, and they can't, right, they can't get away from any of it, and I think this is flexible enough that they still have some autonomy around this during the green zone times, but then it's gonna rewire their brains, so they're like, oh, I'm right here. Oh, what? Oh no, I don't have that. All right, well, I guess I'll keep working, right? I think it's a fantastic policy. I love it.
I have 2 kind of questions, but one is there going to be some educational element to this presence initiative? In other words, during homeroom or assemblies or something, are we going to go over kind of those 3 points? Because I think like keeping it visible and kind of ingrained in the culture would be a good thing. So that way they're like, oh, that's right. That's why I shouldn't be checking it right now. And I guess on the flip side, I think one of the beauties behind this model is if there is a violation and a student keeps using it in class or inappropriately, yes, there's those steps you can take, but that privilege of being able to use it in the cafeteria and the hallways, is that something that you could then take away? And that would be even worse, right? So I think there's a good way that you can say, hey, we're giving you this opportunity, don't miss it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those are great questions. The second question there, our opening day, we meet with each grade level, and then we have crew sessions. So each teacher has X amount of kids for 4 years, and so we go over the handbook and such. But yeah, we share the continuum and share that at the once we get to the 4th, that's the 4th time. Now we're in level 2 infraction territory. Now we're talking with an administrator and a parent, and a student to say, I think we need to restrict your access all day. And kids shudder, but they appreciated the upfrontness, and the staff appreciated the consistency on the administrative team. Say, there's not really any wiggle here. Here it is. We wanted to get to that 4th one because there are, I think there's a realization of the mass addiction that adults and kids alike have with these things. And there's a lot of socio emotional connections. You got families connected with their kids. There's that safety net, and we needed that long view a little bit to kind of work with families on it. And there's multiple times, but we did share there's a level of insubordination that would happen. Last year, we had the privilege of having a focus group on staff. We read Mr. Haight's Anxious Generation. And it was there was high interest, about 20 staff members, and we all read the epic 500-page book. And Dr. Bitz shared an opportunity that we got to actually talk Zoom with the author. That was like the catalyst, probably in early fall, Dr. Bitz?
Yeah, October, November, yeah, with UPenn.
Yeah, and so the focus group, as we read it together, throughout the year, we met about maybe 8 times. The work eventually became of what's the backboard to whatever we decide to do as a school community or as a district or whatever the state does. And we noted that the backboard has to be something of the mission, the beliefs of what good education, what a life that you're making right looks like. And it always came back to the wellness of being present. And we had all the stats the author shares about that. So we knew that an education component had to be this year piece where, we're partnering with families and students. So, for an example, we're working with the PA Attorney General's office. They have a great outreach. And so we're lining up at least 1 or 2, probably 1 session a semester where they're going to come in and talk about online security, sexting, destructive decision making on social media, which with our new DRO that he shares from the borough, that's one of the top challenges that they face. So we're kind of doing kind of a healthy tech conduit, and then something for parents. I've talked to Dr. Bitz about some opportunities, maybe Dr. Bowman, that we can look at of kind of an outreach night that is not just high school. And maybe there could be some opportunities that's more of maybe a K through 12, and so there's some definitely ideas that this focus group we're coming up with. And then there's the parent advisory group is a new opportunity for me. I reached out to our parents from the high school over the last month. That group in itself, with a student advisory group, are going to help funnel in real-time things that they need help with, and we're going to kind of build it as we go, kind of thing. So there's some definitely some traction ahead.
Yeah, I think this is an issue even beyond just high school students. It's, you go to a family function, everybody ends up on their phones, and it's just really sad. I kind of see this as what I experience at home, which is when I say something or do something and my kids remind me, that's not very cat's code. But I think like some of this could filter and go home and kind of, be able to teach everybody, even adults, a little bit about how to be present.
Yeah.
So think of a nice catchy phrase.
Yeah.
I'll add too, we're going to be doing I haven't shared it with the students or staff yet, but there's some really cool opportunities that we're going to probably do as a staff. And with students, like during lunches, we might do like an e-media fast day where the whole school goes in on we're going to be without these phones for a day. We've come up with some silly activities where, basket Wednesdays, you put a basket on the table and you put your phone in there in the cafeteria, and we'll challenge them to do, 25 minutes of deep conversation. We'll have conversation cards that, like Chick-fil-A has, there's like 10 cards, and they just go through and so we're gonna have some fun with it. And like you said, it's the deep habits that kids and adults alike have that we want them to be aware of, and see where we can go from there. Yeah.
About a month ago, I bought caddies for my husband and I,
Yeah.
and they're on our fridge, and we got one of those bricks where we can block, kind of block all, non-essential apps, and we race to see who could get to 100 hours bricked for, and so, but that's something we've been doing this past month. I tripled the number of books I usually read. I read a lot, but I tripled the number of books, just the presence with our son in the evenings, and that's something that he's noticed, he notices, and it's, something that we're being mindful of at home, that as our son, who's in elementary school, and about to be, and he just started 3rd grade, but he has friends now with personal devices, and he's starting to ask, but it's he's like, why, you know, you're always on your phone, like, what about me? And it's like, we don't want that to be the norm. We want him to not think that in our house that's the norm, or that that's how we're spending all of our time. Like, we want presence. We want a presence initiative in our house too. So I'm noticing just a change in our house, and you know, that hopefully, you know, what is happening at the high school will have some legs in the community as we learn personal responsibility with their devices.
All right. If there's no objections, we'll move this on for a second reading and a future vote. All right. Thank you. And that is all that's on the agenda for this evening. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.